All right, folks, back again for another episode to close out this week as midweek with Eric Smith continues on. Thanks again to Sherman Hamilton for joining me last night. Certainly a very engaging, thought-provoking conversation with Sherm. I hope all of you enjoyed it, and I appreciate those of you that have continued to tune in over the course of the last 3 months or so, 2.5 months roughly, since we've been doing this show here on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. My guest tonight will be Matt Devlin, and we will look back to a lot of memories of the championship run for the Toronto Raptors last year as we are very quickly approaching the 1-year anniversary of the title itself being won. So hello to all of you who have tuned in. George, good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. Ken, Blake, many others that are coming in right now. Mark, much appreciated as always. And once Matty D joins the mix, we will get going. I did speak to him a couple hours ago. He knows he knows about the show. I reminded him, so he's a couple minutes late, but that's all good. And we'll get rolling once he slides in here. I'll tell you personally, and I'll probably repeat this once Matty comes on. And I said this to Sherm last night as well. I can't believe that it's been a year. To me, I'm shocked by that. Daniela, Chris, good to see you. Toddy. I can't believe it's been a year. As much as the last 5 months or so has been a grind, no doubt, the previous 7 blew by because I can't believe we're coming up to a calendar year. And Matty D is there now, so give me like a little 5-10 second pause here to bring him into the mix, and we will get going. There we go.
How you doing, buddy? Was I supposed to be on right at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. rather?
That's all right. 10:02 is okay.
10:02
is all right.
Okay, I apologize for being.
But hold on a second.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing is somebody got a haircut.
Oh, dude, it was out of control. It was out of control. I think for the last week, I just slicked it back. I mean, it was.
Well, that's what I got going on
here. It was. No, you got it's the first. Yours is. I can't believe you're 3 months in almost on that. You're looking good.
Well, it's because it grows here, but not quite here.
No, that's all right. It's all good. It's all good.
And the beard has been trimmed about 5 times because otherwise it would be down to here right now. So
yeah. Well, I just after about 4 or 5 days, I gotta shave. That's just
okay. But hold on a second. Here's the real question, because I remember about 6 weeks ago, we were doing one of our crew calls for the Raptors, for Raptors.com and Raptors YouTube, and you talked about how you were the first one, I believe, in your household to pull out the clippers, to give the boys a trim, and also, more importantly, to give your wife a haircut. So who did yours?
Yeah, I did. But
who did yours?
Was fortunate enough. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to have a neighbor that I actually trusted. So out came the
Yeah.
And away you go.
I keep freezing up here. I don't know if it's me or you, so I'm gonna try to plug into a different connection here for a second and see if that does us any good here, because maybe it's on my end. See if that's any better.
Could be mine.
Who knows?
Sure.
Who knows? Matty, before I get into looking back to last year, as I said to Sherm last night, and we ultimately ended up doing an entire hour. Leo, a couple nights ago, we spent 10, 15 minutes before getting into some Raptor conversation. What's happened over the course of the last couple of weeks since the on both sides these last 10 to 14 days? And I see you, hopefully you heard me there. I saw we kind of paused again for a second. Yeah. But I believe personally, and you can take this whatever direction you like, but to me, you bring a unique perspective in terms of somebody that has spent a great deal of their life living in the U.S., now having lived in Canada for over a decade. Not that we are without issues here by any means, but also where you've lived, where you grew up in New York City, having lived in some of the more heated hotbeds stateside, especially when we speak about the South, whether it be Memphis or Charlotte. to me, you bring kind of a unique perspective to a lot of this.
Well, first of all, I think what we've seen over the course of the last 2 weeks, I think Masai, uh, mentioned that there are two pandemics going on right now, and I think he was so right. Uh, it saddens me. Uh, it's something that um, is extremely difficult because I think we all had hoped that we were beyond it, and uh, we're not, clearly. And so it is a time to listen. It's a time to have conversations, no matter how difficult they may be or uncomfortable they may be. And Eric, you and I have had this conversation quite often, along with Paul Jones, and we've had conversations with Sherman and Leo. There's so many things that my family loves about Toronto. The fact that it is a multicultural city, that so much of what you teach in your home, you want it to be reinforced by your environment that you send your kids out to. And we have had that experience here. But as you know, our experience is different. Um, and I understand that. And so it is something that is extremely important to have the discussion. Uh, it is extremely important that, I think, maybe all this is meant to be. There's no distractions now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no distractions. Uh, so for myself, and you've met my parents a ton,
Yep.
um, they raised me in a household that obviously, was one that was very open from friends and environment, and growing up where I grew up in the 70s, going to PS 75 in New York City. But then you leave, we moved to Sacramento, California, Nashville, Tennessee, and went to high school, went to university in Boston, so many different experiences, and seeing so many different things along the way. But it's important to have the conversations and to continue. And what I believe, at least in this situation, is that we're going to continue to have these conversations, and it's important to have the conversations, right? And I don't think that once the games come back that no, I think that these conversations are going to continue to happen, and they
Mm-hmm.
have to. Um, and we have that within our, I think we've had some of those conversations, as you well know, within our friend group, right?
Yeah.
And you have to continue to have those. And but it's sad, that here we are again. And if you know, you think about from the U.S. perspective, here we are again, and it's 2020. And there have been, right, too many of these situations, from a police brutality and the systematic racism, all those things. And I remember, during the whole Colin Kaepernick, situation, that I look back, and I remember, really doing a deep dive of reading about it, and trying to hear from veterans that, what did they feel? And he wasn't disrespecting the flag at all.
Mm-hmm.
We know the story now, obviously, as to why he went from sitting to, kneeling. There are a lot of ways to disrespect the flag, and you can look it up because it's online. But kneeling is not one of them. But yet there was a segment of the population that made that a story, right? They made that the narrative. instead of what ultimately he was doing, which was drawing attention to police brutality. And um, he has a right, as you know, he has a right to do that, and that's why the people that have served are serving, so that you can have that right. And um, but here we are 3 years later, and it's something that fortunately we're all having this conversation now, and fortunately, maybe, right, there isn't anything to distract us, that here it is, right? You have the two pandemics, and the time is now, and the time for all of us to stand together. We're all here together, right? How many times have we heard it? um I don't know if you watched, Be Water with Bruce Lee, and you're online and you're looking at different interviews, and we're all part of the human race, right? And how many people have said that, right? There's one race, the human race. And so I know these are things that you talk to your son about and talk about in your family, and those conversations continue. They need to continue for all of us. And it's something that will continue. I think that this is a time that this will change for sure.
I want to ask you something, Maddie. Tell me if you agree or disagree. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I said this to Sherm last night, and I've said this privately to my wife, to friends as well. I've used Charlotte as the example, and I bring that up to you because you lived there for so long. Again, don't agree just for the sake of agreeing. Tell me if you haven't felt it or if you haven't seen it. But one of the things I said last night was, I have felt, and I remember you and I in person and then over text 3.5 years ago in Oklahoma City on the night that America was voting. You initially, like so many others, were convinced there's absolutely no way in hell that Donald Trump's going to win the vote. And it was once Ohio comes in, once Pennsylvania comes in, once Michigan comes in, it's gonna be, it'll be Hillary. There's no way. All of a sudden, the returns start coming in, and you have that holy blank moment, Trump's going to win. And I have noticed, and I've said this multiple times, I have noticed, especially in the South. Now, I've been traveling in the NBA for 15 years. You've been doing it longer than I have. In the last 3.5 years, more so, way more so than the previous 8 years when there was a black president, way more so prior to Obama. In the last 3.5 years, I have felt, especially in the South, and Charlotte actually comes to mind tops more than any for my own personal experiences and things I feel like I've seen and felt. I have seen and felt more racial tension in the United States in the last 3.5 years than ever before in my 15 years. You're an American, you're a Canadian, you have dual citizenship now, you've been on both sides of the border, you've lived there in Charlotte, you've lived in Memphis. Do you agree with that? Have you felt that, or do you bring a different perspective?
Well, I think I have a little bit of a different perspective. It's clear, obviously, by what we've seen over the course of the last 2 weeks, Eric, that it's been there longer than the 2.5,
sure.
3 years, right?
Yes. I'm just saying I felt it, and maybe that's my own blindness prior to that, but I've felt it more.
And I remember I was really young before. I moved around quite a bit, but spent in the early 70s living in Boston when they were desegregating the schools at that time. That was a very tense time and racially charged time. If you look at from you look back on that. I remember moving from California to Nashville, Tennessee, which is a great city for those that have been there. But obviously, there's, an element, there, as there is in so many different, uh, cities, towns, provinces, states. But I remember waking up the first day that we were there. We're staying in a hotel in downtown and looking out the window, and there being a KKK rally. That was 1980, 81.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, you think back, I remember having a conversation with my parents at the time, so, fortunately I've traveled, a lot and have been exposed to a lot. And it's clear that I think maybe what you've seen over the course of the last 2.5 years, maybe it was already there, bubbling under the surface, and then it obviously we know what's happened. And I do think that you think about, I think, what's his name, Chris Swanson, the sheriff in Michigan. I think it's so much of it is about how, from a police department and from just an individual person, how you approach situations. And so we've seen those images where there have been, people in, police departments that have taken a knee, have walked right with, the protesters, and I think understand. And then we've seen the other side of it, right, where you have, a president that, wants to take a picture outside of a church. And so, there is a time for change, and that time is now. It needs to change. And, I think that, we're going to obviously, Eric, see, another situation here, with the election, right? And, you hope that, this time, I know it's funny you bring up the Oklahoma City, I had kind of forgotten about that. But I remember watching it and texting back and forth with you, and I just did not think that was going to happen, and it did. And now's the time, obviously, to, as you've talked about, I'm sure, over the course of this week, and everybody hopefully is having the conversations about, now's the time to really, have these conversations that need to be, had and discussed, right? And those are really important, and we must, keep that at the forefront. And I think, a large part of conversations are listening. As you and I love to talk, because that's our job.
Yeah,
but it's also a time, you just you sit back and you also, take it in and listen and observe, and then, take action in the proper manner, and
yeah. I said to somebody earlier today, Matt, I was doing an interview for Kareem had me on and talking on his podcast, his blog. He had reached out, and I, was happy to do it. And one of the things that we discussed is, at least from my opinion, my perspective, what I've very quickly learned in the last 2 weeks, and you kind of just said it almost word for word, is there's no denying the importance of listening and learning and having conversations right now. But I think even in, let's hypothetically or just arbitrarily say 14 days ago, I was saying, I need to listen more. I need to learn more. I need to have conversations. Now in the last 7 days, I'm saying more, well, yeah, I still need to listen and learn, have those conversations, but I need to be more vocal. I need to use my voice. I need to use my platform. And as I've said previously, I said it to Sherm last night, I've said it to other people. When I say platform, I don't mean me as Eric Smith in broadcasting. I mean whomever you are, your platform, whether it's to 5 people or to 55 people or to 50,000 people. It's having that platform, that strength, that maturity to use your voice, to talk to your friends, to talk to your neighbors, to talk to your family, to talk to your coworkers, to talk to the public in general, and not be afraid of what it might mean to be not only an ally, but just be a good person. I spoke to somebody today, a visible minority today, and what they said to me was, at the end of the day, all of this comes down to, are you a good person or not?
Mhm.
What's in your heart? Not just what's in your gut, but what's in your heart. Do you have good in you? If you have good in you, let the good out and be an ally. Because if you're good, it shouldn't be hard. And it shouldn't be a question.
Yeah. No, you're right. And, as you're talking, think about so many of the stories that you read. Sherry Ford, a colleague of ours, and I don't know if you had the opportunity to
I
read,
did. I did.
and how difficult that must have been for her. Um, and so there's just so many stories. It's time, to, as you mentioned, to listen and to learn and to have these conversations. And um, it's important.
Let me ask you this. Going back to last year, I'm kind of backing my way into it. I suppose I'm looking at the end before I get to the beginning. This there isn't necessarily a tie to race or racism here, but when we speak about police, and one of the bigger moments, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, in your career was actually standing on stage and being a calming voice to tens of thousands of people, arguably millions of people that were still on the streets as well, at the Raptors championship parade and the celebration at Nathan Phillips Square, when the 7-hour parade celebration, which was by all standards, by all accounts, about 99.99% calm, joyous, a loving of Raptor fans, turned sour and had a black eye on what happened at the end of the day with the shooting that took place. And I recall telling you the story. And as you were on stage with the players, I was to your right of the stage. I had just come off the bus with all the players. And as we came off the bus, and I was looking for a bathroom and something to drink, the players were directed one way towards the stage. I was directed the other way towards the off-stage side area where a lot of the friends and family were gathering, and that's where I was told to stay. And I had no sense of what was going on. And the only thing I remember is listening to you and firing up the crowd and getting everybody going. And then as you're talking here, out of the corner of my eye, I see every head just going boom, 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 boom. And everybody's looking sideways now. Nobody's looking at you or looking at the players on stage. And the initial word was from people, at least in my area, was that there was this massive rush of people. And we assumed, or we thought at least, that was the perspective from where we were, was it was the millions, or at least the thousands, that were trying to scramble to get into the square. They wanted to be part of the party still. And even though it was at capacity, they wanted in, and they were trying to rush over barricades to get in, and police were trying to hold them back. Little did we know that it was people, yes, scrambling, trying to get in, but they were trying to get away from the shooter and from bullets that they heard and shots that they heard that were fired. How did you handle that? I know we're trained as broadcasters in terms of thinking on your feet, ad-libbing, improving, whatever, but how did you handle that in the moment without really having a whole lot of details of what was truly going on?
Well, you go back to that time, and you have a lot of mixed emotions about that day. As you mentioned, there's 3 million plus people. There's not really one person that I've spoken to that was along that parade route from a player perspective, or even for yourself, you covering it, being on one of the buses. You know, the, you know, out there for 5 hours, but taking it all in. And
Mm-hmm.
there was just amazing moments, right? And just the sea of people and the joy, just the celebrating, all the lives, everybody coming from all across Canada to
Yeah.
have that special moment. I was stationed, as you know, up on stage, and that was an interesting day because everyone was waiting there at Nathan Phillips Square, and it was really hot, and I remember handing out water bottles to people, and we had up on the big screens the parade being shown, and then we lost transmission of that, and there were some moments there. But when I was standing off on the side, players are up, and the ceremony is getting underway, and Mr. Tannenbaum is speaking, and I had an earpiece in my ear, and from the other side of the stage where the control room was, in my ear, they said there's an emergency and you have to stop Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Tannenbaum. And I look across, and they're like, they come back in my ear again, there's an emergency. And immediately I thought, okay, what is the emergency? Because as you and I both know, it depends how I'm going to interrupt and then have a conversation. Totally depends upon what the emergency is. Do I need to
Sure.
direct people a certain way? Do I need to move a group of people here? Do we need to make room for medics or any of those sort of different things? So I made my way around the back of the stage to the other side where the control room was, and I saw a gentleman, Anton Wright, who
Mm-hmm.
runs all of our game ops, and he was there, and I asked what was the emergency. He didn't know. There's another gentleman there, Mike Farriman, and he had a walkie-talkie that was he was in contact with the authorities, and so he said, "Hey, Matt Devlin's got a question," and I just asked, "What's the emergency?" And the gentleman at the other end said, "There's a gunman at Queen and Bay." Now, from a timeline perspective, more than likely that shooting had already happened, right?
Yep.
But that was the information that I had, and that's what I had to work with. And so as I heard that, I turned, and I'll never forget, I turned, and I'm looking straight ahead now, and I see Mr. Tannenbaum off to my right, and then you just see all of Nathan Phillips Square, and I'm on the side of the stage. And I walk up to Mr. Tannenbaum and say, "Excuse me, I have to interrupt you. There's an emergency." And so I have a microphone with me, and Anton did a great job of, talking to Mr. Tannenbaum as I then went on the stage. And at that point, as you go out there, I actually thought of what my mother had always told me about your words matter. Your
Mm-hmm.
words matter. What you say matters, meaning, everything that's coming, you need to know that, words have power. And so it was just really important for me to stay calm, and then have a conversation and talk to everyone. You mentioned it earlier about heart. I really just spoke from my heart. And there was a time as I was continuing to talk that I thought to myself, okay, I got to keep talking, right, until I hear something in my ear. That was kind of
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
goal, right?
Yep.
And I remember bringing in, Jack and Leo and Eric and Jonesy. I don't know if you remember this, and Sherm. I mentioned all our broadcasters' names, and because I'm just thinking I got to buy time here,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and I knew if I mentioned all of your names, that would at least get me 20 seconds or so. And but there were a lot of different factors that happened. I went back and watched the video because you don't know what's going on. I'm standing up there. I could see behind the Toronto sign at Nathan Phillips Square, the southwest corner. There was a lot of movement there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And number one, the police department did an amazing job. They acted swiftly. It didn't escalate, which thank God for that. The
Yeah.
prime minister did not leave the stage. I think that was really huge. No player left the stage. So I really think that really helped, right? Because no matter what, if I'm up there talking, all of a sudden you see the prime minister leave the stage, who knows what would have happened, right? So there are so many different things that happened. I go back and watch, and you see where Justin Trudeau does look to his right and nods and says, "Okay, now I know that there were RCMP lining the stage, as you well know from being there, and so he obviously got the okay to stay there, and thankfully." And then obviously, the police acting swiftly. And then, even when that whole ceremony started back up, and we did not know what ultimately had happened.
Yeah.
It really wasn't until it ended. I remember talking because Drake was up there. He asked, "Okay, what's going on?" And his people, mentioned, what I had heard. So, and then everything ends. And I remember finding my family, and then started making our way back home. And I was just emotionally drained. But at that point,
Absolutely. Yeah.
my phone was, there was just so many people reaching out at that time. And the next day, and over the next day, and then the next day after that, you start to hear different stories. I remember somebody saying to me that, Matt, this woman said to me, "I remember looking up and seeing everybody in front of the Toronto sign," right? She was behind it, right on the south side of the Toronto sign. And she thought, "Oh no, if everybody turns and heads this way." And so the way she kind of explained it is, you kept everybody from the Toronto sign up to the stage kind of engaged, right? And, heard a lot of different stories from a lot of different people, and that's why you have mixed emotions about that day. But it was, as we know, just, so thankful that it didn't escalate. And, the thing about that parade, and then also the 2-month timeline, Eric, for me, is that everybody has a story. And I think that that's what's made this title so special. You and I are so fortunate to travel and see all the Raptor fans that travel. And from every province, from the territories, they come, they watch, they love their Raptors. And so you personally, with your neighbors, and your friends and your family, have, this great story, and not just one, but 2 months, 60 days worth, right? As do I, right? During that time, becoming a Canadian citizen, and, all sorts of other different things happening that that make it special. And, everyone else has their own stories, and that all across this country. So that's why, to me, like, it just, this title, and I think the players recognize that, right? It's just bigger than, Toronto. It's, the entire country.
I want to go back just quickly for a second, just to share something with you. And I actually don't even know if I've ever told you this story, but the day of the parade, as everything was kind of happening, and it was probably just a couple of minutes after you had gone on stage and kind of calmed the crowd, and as the ceremony continued, myself and Jonesy were supposed to be on the air with Bob McCowan, who was still working at the Fan at the time. McCowan was doing his afternoon show, Primetime Sports, from a bar close to Nathan Phillips Square. So Jonesy and I were both in the area to your right, to the right of the stage. And we had to make the decision, how do we get to the bar I want to say that it was at around Young and Bay. How do we get there in the middle of chaos, fighting our way through the crowd, let alone through the frenzy of people that are likely scrambling from Nathan Phillips Square as well? There's no way in hell we're getting a taxi cab or an Uber or anything, so we've got to go on foot. But what's the best route there? Because on top of that, and I don't say this arrogantly at all, not only are we dodging the crowd and the frenzy and the fear and the panic and the police and everything else, but then there's also going to be fans that might recognize us and want to stop and talk and whatever, and we got to get on the air. We got to get there. So I said to Jonesy, let's go north to come back south. Let's kind of go a long way around it to come back down. Now, as it turns out, one of the few smart things I've done in my life, the night before the parade, I had actually stayed at the Sheraton Hotel on Sportsnet's dime. So I was in the city to be close to where I needed to be to get all the way to the X in the morning, but still I was in the city and not driving in from the burbs or anything because I knew it was going to be absolutely nuts.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I took my car the night before and I parked it down at Jarvis and Lakeshore in a lot down there, knowing that when the parade ends, I will walk, get to my car, and boom, be on the Garden to get home, as opposed to being stuck up near the Sheraton or Nathan Phillips Square and having to fight my way down just to get to the Garden. That alone will take 4 hours. So anyways, we leave Nathan Phillips Square. We go out to University. We go up University towards Dundas, I believe. We're coming across Dundas.
All right.
And as we're walking across Dundas...
By the way, keep talking. Yeah, you made me think of something, so I'm looking for something. All right, go ahead.
All right. So as we're coming across Dundas, we're maybe 100, 150 yards from Yonge Street, and we heard a shot. Now, to this day, I still don't even know if it was a gunshot, but we were convinced it was a gunshot. Anybody that was on that street walking across Dundas sprayed in 19 different directions, just running, obviously, away from the shooter, including myself and Jonesy. In fact, I was shoulder to shoulder with Jonesy. When we heard that shot, I turned around, Jonesy was gone. Like, he was gone. He left me in his dust. I didn't know where the hell he was. And I went over to go inside, right there at Yonge and Dundas on the northeast corner. And actually, you know what? I have it wrong. It wasn't Yonge and Dundas. It's the next street north, where I believe there is a Pickle Barrel and some sort of kind of indoor mall/plaza where there's some stores. So it's the next street north of Dundas. Jonesy's gone. I can't even find him. I go to get in the mall, the little plaza that's there, and there's a security guy on the other side of the door who's holding the door shut. He's not letting anybody in. And I remember thinking, what in the world? Like, you're not letting anybody in. There's tons of people inside this mall and plaza. But I think it was security trying to control the situation in terms of not allowing this sea of people to smash through doors and come in. But I'm also thinking, we're trying to get away from another potential shooter that's out here on the street. We're just trying to be safe. So I stood behind a pillar and just kind of did one of these and hid for a second. I looked to my right. There's a family there with a stroller with a baby that was maybe a year old, and they're standing there. They kind of deked beside me, beside the pillar, and we stood there just silent for about 2 minutes. And then I kind of peeked around thinking, okay, are we all right? Like, I don't even know. So I ran back to University, went up another block north, cut across finally, and did one of these. I got to Yonge Street kind of looking around like I don't know what I'm doing. Didn't see too much chaos, didn't hear any more shots. So I ran across Yonge Street. Now I'm kind of cutting just north of Ryerson University. I get my way over to Sherbourne, and I walk down Sherbourne. I call the producers of Primetime, and I said, I'm not coming on with McCown. I'm going home. I'm getting the hell out of here. I said, I don't even know what's still happening at Nathan Phillips Square. I don't even know if the ceremony, the rally's still going on. I don't know if there are still active shooters. I'm getting the blank out of here. And I walked all the way down Sherbourne, all the way down to Lakeshore to my car at Jarvis and Lakeshore, got in my car, and I was home before like 7 o'clock. So I missed most of that because I was just getting the hell out of Dodge and didn't want to be there anymore. And that's where, for me, selfishly, it was a very sour end to an otherwise not only incredible day, but incredible 2.5 month run that we had a chance to experience.
Sorry, while you're talking, making me think, but I've been going through, we've had time, so I've been going through a lot of stuff at the house. And as you well know, I have more notes upon notes upon notes that I keep, and they're all here. I just started going through stuff and started throwing some stuff out. But then I actually came across this is what got sent to me, which is the Nathan Phillips Square celebration and ceremony script,
Oh,
Toronto
wow.
Raptors championship, which was sent to me. So I think I got it about 12:31 in the morning. And I remember saying, okay, how am I going to get down there? And they're like, just, you'll be fine. Just, jump on the TTC, get down there kind of thing. And I remember
Yeah.
waking up the next morning going, okay, well, they're shutting down TTCs. And oh God, that was quite the day. Fortunately, was able to convince a friend to drive myself and our family down there. And I actually talked our way. We were supposed to start, I think, at 12 noon. I was supposed to be on stage, and I figured, we should get down there at about 10 or so, and ended up really talking our way all the way to the Sheraton. Did not think about spending the night at the Sheraton. I should have. And then I didn't have any credential.
Really?
No, I had nobody gave me any credential. They're like, don't worry, you don't need a credential. I'm like, I don't have a credential. And
Yeah.
so what I did was, and I don't know, I keep a lot of, I don't know, do you keep a lot of your credentials and stuff like that? I keep, just
Yeah,
in case.
I do. There's a drawer. They're all jammed in
Yeah.
there.
I got summer league credentials. I don't even
Yeah.
know where. Oh, here's my
Yeah.
NBA Finals credential. Okay.
There we
My
go.
NBA
Yeah.
Okay, so I end up taking my NBA Finals credential with me. And so, I'm using that. Oh gosh, I couldn't even get into I was supposed to meet up with people in the back area, where they do radio and TV. And
Right.
oh, let me tell you what, it was an adventure just to get
Yeah.
to the parade, just to get to the stage, because I didn't have a credential. I didn't have anything. And but fortunately, I was able to find my way there, and from that standpoint, it all worked out. But I remember leaving just emotionally drained, and then the next day, Jack and I had agreed to do an appearance up in Muskoka like 3 months prior. Okay.
Right.
Maybe even longer than that, and it was for our friends at Molson and Coors Light. And so both Jack and I were up there the next day, and the day after the parade. But it was on the drive up there that I was starting to get phone calls from a lot of people that obviously were a part of what was happening there at the parade.
All right. Listen, we got about 15, 17 minutes or so here. Now that we kind of dealt with the end, let's go back to the beginning. With due respect, I don't know if there's a whole lot to say about Orlando. They gave a bit of a scare in game one. They kind of scrapped and clawed a little bit in a couple of the games in games 2 through 5, but it was relatively quick order after game one for the Raptors. But if we fast forward to that second series against Philadelphia, the highs and the lows from Embiid being terrible to Embiid being all world to the massive moments for Kawhi to Siakam stepping up to the bench struggles of the Raptors to the second unit of the Sixers appearing to be so much better, to just the chess match that was going on, and then of course the shot at the buzzer for Kawhi. Matty, give me a little synopsis on the round 2 series against Philly.
Well, real quick, I'm going to start with Orlando because I think it was important.
All right.
Later in the postseason, Kyle talked about how Nick had gotten after the team on 2 occasions. One of which was after game 1, and after that loss, they responded, and they won 4 in a row. Orlando was a tough matchup. They had won a lot of games coming in, and I think that the roster construction of the Raptors was really key in that second round. They could play big. They ultimately went to that, as you and I both know. Serge and Mark had played together all of 31 minutes, and they ended up playing a ton together, along with Pascal, Kawhi, and Kyle all out on the floor at the same time. And so to me, that was actually their toughest opponent. And it was a old school Eastern Conference, as anybody that has seen The Last Dance, it reminded me of those sort of Eastern Conference battles, right?
Yes. Yes.
They both, it's like the old heavyweight fight, two fighters standing in the middle of the ring, both teams believing, right, that they had a chance to win it all, but they just had to get through this series. And you think about what Philadelphia had, and Jimmy Butler and Bede and Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris, and then James Ennis off of the bench and what he was able to provide. So the Raptors getting out of that with obviously the greatest shot in the history of the Raptors and one of the greatest shots in the history of the NBA, the game winner, Game 7, was just truly remarkable. I remember leaving Milwaukee after Game 1, walking back towards the hotel, jumping on the bus, and thinking to myself that the Raptors are the better team, that they were going to beat the Milwaukee Bucks. I know they lost that night, but I thought that they were going to beat the Milwaukee Bucks. I thought Game 2 was an outlier game. But I thought what was important there, a couple of things. Marc Gasol, he blamed himself, right? He goes, "That's on me." Well, it wasn't necessarily on him, but yet, as a leader, he said, "Hey, I have to be better," right? And then also, I thought it was, another one of those moments where, Kawhi was just brilliant. Hey, you're down 0-2, where are you going? Well, going back to Toronto for Game 3.
Right.
He gave us a window of who he is and how he thinks after the Game 7 when he celebrated. And then in the post-game press conference, he said, "Well, I try to act as if I've done it before, but I had never made that shot before, so I allowed myself to celebrate." Yes. And I thought that was really cool upon reflection. So them taking care of, Game 3, double overtime, Kyle fouls out, Raptors win Game 3, and then here you go. And everybody that maybe wasn't a part of Philadelphia series from a success standpoint, here comes Fred and Norm, and they're back, and the matchups work, and away you go. And the Raptors were, they were something special to watch, that's for sure.
And to your point, Maddie, and you just touched on it, especially as Fred found his form and Norm did as well, it was so evident in that conference finals against Milwaukee how much better that matchup was for Toronto than the Philadelphia matchup. As good as Milwaukee was, 60-plus wins for that team, first in the East, first in the NBA, yada, yada, yada. They got Giannis. But the Raptors were a more balanced team, a more complete team, and ultimately a better team and better suited to play a team like Milwaukee than ultimately what they had to deal with in round 2 with Philly.
Right. And then also when you look at Golden State as well, right, you're able to play more your style, and then, the depth at which, Fred was shooting, instead of a 23-foot three, he's stretching it out, shooting 25, 26, 27. I don't think that you can overlook, and I say this quite often, the roster construction, the versatility of the roster, and Nick's willingness to utilize all of that. And then for everybody to accept that, we as the Raptors need to understand that, okay, we're going to do whatever it takes to win those games. And if these combinations are this, that's fine. I'm just going to continue to work on my game and get better. And knowing that maybe the next game, the next round, that matchup is better for me. And so I give it a ton of credit to Masai and Bobby Webster, Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster, President GM, and Dan Tolzman and that whole group of putting together a team that can play multiple styles. In the regular season, you can play your way. 99.9% of the games, you're playing your way, and when you're a really good team, you're winning. But in the postseason, you will meet up with someone that you're going to be challenged to the depth of that roster. And the Raptors are challenged against Philadelphia. They played differently than what they would typically play, and they beat them. And that to me was really significant. And then obviously we get into Milwaukee and then Golden State, and what a fun ride it was.
Hey, we got about 10 minutes here. Yeah. Game 1 against Golden State. on the
Pascal.
biggest stage of his career, and 11 of 14, just lights out. Like that to me, I will always be marveled by that. I feel like a broken record every time I talk about Pascal, because what continues to blow my mind is a guy that has not been playing basketball for a decade, less than 10 years, and this guy not only has a title, he's an all-star, he's a most improved player, and here he is on the biggest stage in the world, on the finals in game one, and the biggest, brightest lights, and he is arguably, if he's not the best player on the floor that night, he's among the top 2 players on the floor. He was incredible.
He was, and I go back to a conversation I had with Nick Nurse early in the season when Pascal was initiating a lot of the offense, rebounding, bringing it down the court, turning the ball over, doing some things that, he just struggled with. And I remember speaking to Nick about, well, hey, how long are you going to allow for this? And he said, well, if we want to become the team that we want to become, and if Pascal can become the player that we believe, I'm going to allow him to work through all of this because it's going to help us down the line. And then,
Yes,
obviously that goes along with all the video work that he does, as you and I know, all the work that he does on the court, right? So the support system is there to help him improve. And then I think you have that moment against Phoenix, a game winner, right? Where Nick draws up a play late January. I think it was late January for him. And boom, he scores a game winner against Phoenix. And then all of a sudden, here comes the confidence. And for him in the bright lights, game one, to do what he did was really special. And then, you have the game 2 loss, and you have Nick going into the locker room. Hey, they got one here. Let's go get one there. And, let's take back home court. And Kawhi says, forget about that. Let's go get them both. And when your best player says, go get them both, you go get them both. I did think it was really interesting, Eric, that outside of game 1, teams were really successful on the road because, as you know, in the NBA Finals, there is a lot going on. And the Raptors, when they went to the Bay Area, they stayed at a separate hotel. They really got away from a lot of just what was going on. And conversely, the same thing with the Golden State Warriors. And so, when you're at home, there's just a ton going on during the NBA Finals. And I thought that was interesting. And I marveled at, Raptors win game 6. Kyle, as everybody knows, gets off to an unbelievable start. I remember after game 6 running into Del Curry and Steph Curry. And I know Del from my days in Charlotte, and Steph, from my days in Charlotte when he went to Charlotte Christian and then on to Davidson College. And they were very gracious. And we had an opportunity to just talk about the 2.5-month run, which, as you know, is really intense.
Sure, yeah.
Emotionally, mentally, and physically draining. And you sit there, and I'm looking at Steph Curry, and I'm like, you've done it 5 years in a row, and then you think about LeBron doing it for the length of a decade worth of it, right? Prior to last, I mean, it takes a lot out of you, but as we all know, it's well worth it. And when you see Kyle Lowry, Marc Gasol, and Kawhi, and Danny, and Pascal, and Fred, and everyone's story, Nick Nurse, box in 1, the triangle in 2, and all the different things that he was willing to try, and was able to come away with a title. It was just really special. And the O Canadas at Oracle. And,
incredible.
Just incredible. And, we'll never forget those days. That's for sure.
All right, let me ask you this. We only have a couple minutes left here. You can't pick Kawhi's game winner. That's obvious. So you can't take that one. The biggest moment or the most memorable moment for you? I can give you mine first if you want, or you can go ahead
Go
first.
ahead. Give me. Yeah.
Fred VanVleet's 3-ball with 3:44 to go in Game 6, after we had already seen him split, blood pouring down the face, losing, all over half of the tooth, whatever, and coming back with the Band-Aid under, 3:44 left. He drops the rainbow three, which puts Toronto up 104-101, and the going to commercial, and just I loved it. Like, that to me was theater. I loved that moment. And I swear to you, that stands out more than anything right now. Yeah. Even at times in my brain, I see Fred doing, I see him doing that even more than I see Kawhi's quadruple double doink shot, whatever, falling down. I see Fred's face just screaming, and the passion, the emotion in his face in that moment in Game 6.
A spectacular moment and a huge bucket. I actually go toward the ending sequence because I think it was pretty agonizing, right?
Yes.
And to finally see the zeros on the clock, I do go back to that.
Yeah.
And I think about that often. I think Kawhi's lasting. And then to me, it was just the timeout and, Danny throws the ball away. I mean, that whole sequence. And you're great.
There was a lot to unpack there. There was 10 seconds.
Which led to, your great call at the end and my call. And I wanted to wait till zeros on the clock before I said it. I thought that was
Thank
really
God
important.
we did.
Yeah,
Thank God
exactly.
we did.
Totally. Like, you don't want to.
Oh,
and then I remember one of the things, and you've been to my house. I don't have much memorabilia around. I got a lot of books, but I don't have much memorabilia. And I remember going away for a weekend after that with my dad and brother and a couple of buddies. And I came back, and my wife had taken all these pictures that I had sent her along the way, and actually got them all blown up and made them pictures, and they put them up on my wall, which was just, kind of really cool. And one of them was, Rod, Leo, Jack, and I all at the end of Game 6 were like the last ones out of the building. I don't know how that ended up transpiring, but we went we went down to the center court at Oracle. I had a Canadian flag with me, and you've seen the picture, but I have it right here. It's cool. Yeah. And that's just us right there. So anyway, I'd come back.
That's amazing. It's amazing.
And my wife had that made, which was really cool.
Love it.
And you know what? That's why I say, like, there's just so many different, there's never one thing, right, along that special run. And everybody that's listening and watching right now, and for those that are Raptor fans from day one, to those that became Raptor fans right around April 15th or April 30th or June 1st, everybody's got their moment or moments, and that's what's really cool.
Matty, less than a minute to go, so it's a perfect time to end it, man. I appreciate this. I appreciate you sharing the stories, sharing your thoughts and your time. All the best to the family. Be well, and we'll talk soon.
You got it, buddy. Take care.
Thanks, Matty. Thanks to all of you that have watched as well. All the best, everybody.
We'll see you guys.
All right. Stay safe. Take care.
You got it.